So I don't know if you were telling that I was training computer graphics and computer animation since about 25 years. I'm a specialist in that. And I'm not going to talk about this. I'm talking about design thinking. But it's important to know that I have this kind of very specialized background. And I would like to share something which I have learned through the last 6 years, leading this School of Design Thinking, as we call it, the d-schol, short version, at Potsdam in Germany, and what it did to my mind, how it changed my look onto education, and how should we treat young and older people. So it was about 6 years ago, I was appointed to start this new institute after being focused on computer graphics and being a professor at that time. And the institute, the idea was born at Stanford University. There are a bunch of professors, some of them are in their picture. They were sitting together and they were asking themselves, what do we do with our kids today? What do we do with young people? How is the education structured? Is that the right thing, what we are doing? We are piling up knowledge, and they have to be in silos. They have to pile up more and more knowledge because we have the internet, we have the digital era. Everything is connected, and so they have less and less time to talk to other people from other departments because they have to know so much in their special discipline. I have the same experience with my special discipline, computer graphics. So they were saying, at the same time we are confronted with problems which are highly complex on the planet, like global warming, energy problem, transportation, and they cannot be approached by just looking at from one perspective. So let's be radical, that was what they were saying, and start a new department which is fully cross-disciplinary, which is opening to all disciplines, which is inviting the law students, the medical students, the physicists, the engineers, the designers, all the guys at Stanford campus. They started with like a bunch of 20 people, and it turned out to be very successful. They got the problems, they got actually complex problems from outside, not from the ivory tower in the university. They were really asking companies or institutions to give them their real problems, and they started to tackle it. And this person, Hasso Plattner, who is a German, who is the co-founder of SAP, one of the richest people in Germany, and he's still an entrepreneur, he's 68 now, and he found out about this experiment at Stanford 7, 8 years ago. And he liked the idea so much that he was saying, I give you money. You need money for this kind of startup, education startup? I give you about $30 million US. And that ended up to have his name at that institute, label now. From those 20 students, they moved up to 600 now. They're one of the most interesting places to visit at Stanford. And while I was there, 2007, I got the chance to meet with a lot of students, with those guys, to learn what are they doing, what is the new thing about that, and how do they do it, especially because my task was to bring it to Europe, to bring it to Germany. So I had the chance to see some of the projects, and I picked one, which is illustrated through that picture. And the question was, how can we help early-born babies in especially third-world countries, like in Africa, to survive if this kind of machinery, which we call incubator, is not available because it's too expensive. Even hospitals cannot afford those things, $30,000 US. So the industry was asked, can you do this for maybe 10% of the cost, for 2,000, 3,000? Industry was saying, no, we can't, because we have to meet certain technical standards, certain medical standards. So we can do a cheap version maybe for 50%, but not 10%, forget it. And then the same question was asked to the students, to some student teams. And while I was there, I got the chance to see about 10 different prototypes. Several teams were working on that, little teams of 5, 6 people. And most of the prototypes were looking very similar to that one, but there was one outstanding one, and it was looking like this. And you see, I'm using that even if it's kind of 7 years old now, that example, but if you look at that, I would call this a technical-centered approach, technology-centered approach. So you have different pieces of technology, put them together, you make one machine out of it, you put it together in a different way, you sell it to the medical industry, you call it an incubator. This I would call human-centered approach. And this is what the students were doing. And this is the big difference to the normal approach of how to do innovation. With these multidisciplinary teams, they all of a sudden got the chance to do a variety of things, not just to focus on technology, but to focus on the needs of those little kids inside. So they did a trip to Myanmar in this case. They talked to parents who lost their kids. They talked to the doctors, and they tried to find out really empathically what are the basic needs. And they knew about the basic, they learned about the basic needs, and they addressed it with this little kind of sleeping bag, which you can call an incubator, because it's an infant warmer. And the interesting thing is, it costs just 1% of a normal thing. And the students with their product, this is one of the early prototypes, they were so successful, they founded a company, they got money, and now you find this under Embrace, d-schol, you find it as a product, and they are selling thousands of this. And this was, for me, I was witnessing these first steps, and it was, for me, kind of the convincing thing. I've seen a lot of other projects, and at Potsdam, since 6 years, we are doing quite a similar thing. We have the same philosophy, same philosophical approach. We're open to all disciplines. We do everything in English to make it possible to have students from all over the places. We have currently 120 students per semester, and they are coming from more than 70 different backgrounds. So we have architects, we have biologists, we have the IT students, we have business students, law students from all over the places, 75 different backgrounds, so a little version of a university. And we have also a teaching team of about more than 30 people, professors and assistants. They are also training. They are not doing the traditional teaching as you were seeing this here. There's a professor standing in front of a large crowd. No, there's a professor and an assistant. They are teaching, they are coaching a little team of people. And we are using a process, this kind of process, which was, actually the question is, if you have this kind of teams with very, very different backgrounds, every person uses a different way how to do things. So if you bring them together, they start fighting, they start struggling. How should we do that? How should we approach a problem? And we are using that process, which is actually the way how designers intuitively think and act. Is there any designer amongst you? Raise your hand. Some of you, yeah. So low percentage, actually, but this is very similar to our student mass, kind of. And because usually you are not used to this kind of process. What we do is we try first to understand right, to put the right question right. Then we do observation. We send our students out. They go all over the world, wherever it's necessary to get information. We ask them to go there. If it's necessary to go to Tokyo to get information about the research topic they're working on, they go there. And we do a synthesis, and the first 3 steps, we kind of switch off the solution engine in our brain. We not ask ourselves to think of any solution. We just try to find out what is the problem, what is the real problem about, and how can we come very close to the user needs. And then the next 3 steps, we do ideation, prototyping, and testing. We do things what also architects do. They build a model, they build a prototype, which is very important to get feedback from the guys who are giving the money to you or want to have that building. So the same thing we do in every project. So this kind of process we are using. And there's a third thing. We ask our students to not focus too much on technology or business. We ask our students to focus on human values, on the real human needs. Sounds easy. We are working together with a lot of companies, a lot of large companies, institutions. The larger the company, the harder it is, from their perspective, not to think in a technology way or in a business way, but to really concentrate on the user's needs. So this is something which we do in terms of process. But there's another very important thing. We put those teams in a certain new space, in a team-supportive environment. Because this is something which is usually forgotten about. There are a lot of people doing creative processes, having teams, also multidisciplinary is not too new. But the space plays an important role for us. The students have the chance to create a kind of physical, haptical information space. I'm talking about teams of 5, 6 people. So they all get together and they bring their ideas in a visual way out, and you see a lot of pictures, a lot of drawings. And it's also connected, of course, to a virtual information space, but it's very, very important if you're working with a team that you kind of keep this physical information space as a kind of haptical memory of those people. And the other thing is, what we're doing sharing. And we do not the way as we do it here, one person shares with all the others. We do it kind of the next generation way. There's a team, and the team shares with the other teams about their learnings, and they get feedback from all the other teams. So it's a constant feedback process, which we have like nearly every day. Every day means we just have 2 days per week. Our students are not full-time there. They're just there for 2 days. 3 days, they're working on their final thesis, their master thesis, their PhD thesis in their field, but for 2 days, they are in this multidisciplinary environment. One other thing which is very important, they don't earn any credit points. We don't evaluate the individual power. And to summarize it, you see here the 3 core elements which we are using all the time, and we play them together all the time. And this is design thinking. You might think, how simple, very easy. I do parts of that. Actually, if you try to do it and you take those 3 things serious, all of a sudden, a school, a university looks totally different. And if you do this as a company, be mindful of the place, the process, and the people, all of a sudden, a company looks totally different. And this is our experience through the last 6 years, especially my experience running through about 80, 90 projects together with companies. And you might think, what is the hard part of that? The hard part of all those 3 is not the space, it's not adapting to a new process. The hard part is this one. The hard part is the team issues. Because of what? Because of our education system. Our education system, kindergarten, school, university, is fully focused on the individual power, at least in Germany. But I learned yesterday that it's not too much different here. So if I would ask you now, who of you did his or her final thesis as a teamwork? Please raise your hand. As a teamwork. I'll wait for a translation. One. Oh, no, two. How many people? How many people were involved? 4. And what field was it? Wow, 4 different. Amazing. And you over there? How many people were involved? 7. Wow. Amazing. So, but if I would ask you now, who of you is working more or less on a daily basis in a team? Oh, even more. Okay. So now imagine a world where, on my first question, all the hands were going up, except of 2. And those 2 need to explain why my father was saying, and I shouldn't do that team thing. But we're not living in that world. We are living in a world where the whole education system, we are treated for 12, 13, 14 years in a way to become a hero, a single-person hero, to solve every problem on the planet alone. So why do we wonder that teamwork is a problem? That's because we are not trained that way. And I don't blame any person. I couldn't have raised my hand as well. I was trained the same in the art school. Why is it important? Why is it important to do this kind of things? That's because we are living in this kind of world. We are living in a connected environment. We are living, and this isn't even, I was using a software tool which allows you to illustrate the connectivity between all the participants at this TED event. And if you look closer, you find your name. No, I'm just cheating. But this would be existing, but it's actually not a real representation. The real representation of the world we're living in would be this thing, 3-dimensional, dynamically moving, turning, constantly growing, and illustrating that we're in a world where connectivities, where networks are networked with networks. And this is something which we are seeing every day. We are all using these kind of tools, this kind of glass things, and we are doing this all the time. And the problem is our thinking in the back of our mind is more like this. And I call that Brockhaus thinking, because Brockhaus is a very famous encyclopedia in Germany, which nearly every family knows it. Some of the families have it. I own one. Who has an encyclopedia at home? Doesn't have to be in there. When did you look in the last time? 3 years ago. Okay. So why? You still have it there. It's in the shelf, probably. My shelf is as well. It's because we are using the networked version of this way how to organize knowledge. The networked version we could call Wikipedia, but we Google, we do everything. We use the real-time access to knowledge. And this is over. Brockhaus, last month, Bertelsmann, who is owning the brand of Brockhaus, announced there will be no print anymore in the future. And they even have a hard time to put the whole thing online because they don't know how, because they are still stuck with this kind of thinking. The hard part is we don't only use this system to organize our knowledge, we also use it to organize organizations, institutions. Like I was just choosing Comenius University, but I could have used Humboldt University, Technical University, don't matter. But also companies. You look at the different departments. We're dividing up. Department A, Department B, Department C. We are used to divide things. We are not used to connect things. And our statement and my learning through the last 6 years was that we are all witnessing that this is fading away. We're going from Brockhaus thinking to connected thinking. And actually, we have to develop it. We don't know, also myself, I don't know how this feels and looks in every area because we're not trained that way. We have to go from here to there, and I would position myself over there, and I would say most of you are probably also the same trip. And this is why we are doing this. This is why we are educating, we are allowing our students to learn how to think in a connected way. Because one thing is very clear. This transition phase is going on right now, and it is irreversible. There will be no 10 years from now where we will say, Brockhaus Encyclopedia, the book, is back on the shelf. No, it will not happen. And we also have to be aware that we have to reorganize structures, organizations, and also the education system. And we can use that, but you can try all kinds of things to start think connected. We are doing this with asking companies, giving us their real problems, like pharmaceutical companies, giving us questions about diabetes too. Intel, we did a cooperation in Africa to find out how can we learn without a school with just this kind of things in a mobile way. We call that learning to go. Or we helped nurses in Africa also to communicate with each other and with their patients. They are hopping from one farm to the other, and how could they communicate? Just as some examples of how we do that with our students. This is a list of companies who are approaching us because they also want to get rid of this Brockhaus thinking, and they don't know how. They are looking for new ways because they know that they have to rethink their own doing. And my last slides illustrate that design thinking and this kind of network thinking is now going global. And you see, it's not that we are doing from Stanford and Potsdam. It's not a franchise system. It's not like Coca-Cola is doing, we have to put this all over the places. No, we were just reacting. Those yellow dots are just our radar of companies, institutions, schools approaching us and asking us, how are you doing things? How are you changing? What are you doing? And we recently, through the last half year, we started the first d-schol in Beijing. Not we started it, the Communication University of China started it in their environment. And the same thing happened in Kuala Lumpur. And while I was here yesterday, I had to add one slide illustrating what happened at the CUC in Beijing with us. Because we asked them also to think of how does design thinking, how does that way of collaboration work in a Chinese culture? And they started copying, pasting our environment. We were saying, no, don't do that. Think of your own culture. They came up with stand-up tables in a round shape. And I did a workshop. I did several workshops there. And I found out this is our furniture. And this is very German. This is very European. But I just learned that while I was there in China. And then we started thinking about our next generation of furniture, which are team supportive. Tables, surroundings. And you know what came out? Just that thing. And it was so amazing to me yesterday entering that space. It was not in the... But it shows, this is a prototype, but we have the prototype now in test. And we found out it's much better than the rectangle shape. Much better. Because it does also one thing. It eliminates hierarchy. The rectangle shape is so easy to use for set up hierarchical structures. With the hexagon, you have a hard time to do that. So, this is my last slide, a little bit over time. Thanks a lot for your attention. Start thinking connected.